There's a moment in a Virgo's life that nobody warns them about. It's not on the preparation list. It's not on the schedule. It wasn't calculated, it wasn't foreseen, it wasn't included in any of the careful structures that the Virgin took years to build. It happens in a quiet way, almost gently, as if someone decided to rearrange your room while you were sleeping, and when you wake up, everything is in its place, just in a different spot. Because there is a very specific pattern to how the higher power, God, the universe, whatever you recognize as sacred, operates in the nature of Virgo, and it always begins in the most unexpected place, at your points of greatest solidity, where you are most convinced, where you feel most in control, where the plan seems most solid. That's exactly where something starts to move underneath. And what comes after that? The different place that is being prepared for you right now is not a destination that any analysis of yours could have predicted. In the next few minutes, we're going to explore exactly how this process works from within Virgo. Not the stereotype of the sign, the actual mechanics. What happens when the greater force operates specifically on the nature of Virgo, and where ultimately you're being led. Virgo is the sign that knows best how to build. Not in the obvious sense. We're not just talking about plans, goals, and careers. We're talking about a much more sophisticated inner ability, that of creating invisible structures that organize reality before it becomes chaotic. Structures that support not only Virgo's life, but often the lives of those around them, and that no one notices, because a good structure is precisely one that doesn't need to be noticed to function. You learned early on that the world has a logic, that things make sense when you pay enough attention, that chaos, most of the time, is just order that hasn't been found yet. And that belief, that silent and practical faith in the possibility of understanding, is what sustains you. For years it worked. Years. You developed an almost intuitive ability to anticipate what was coming, to see where the problem would appear before it appeared, to prepare solutions for situations that others hadn't even imagined could exist, to create stability, not because you didn't know that life was unstable, but because you knew that instability has patterns, and patterns can be learned. So you learned. But there is something that this gift, this real and profound gift, cannot process. There is a force that wasn't included in the calculations. That doesn't respect the patterns you've learned. That doesn't fit into any structure you might build, no matter how sophisticated. Not because you failed. Not because the system has a flaw. But that's because this force wasn't designed to fit into systems, and she's on the move now. Perhaps you're already feeling it. Not as a dramatic event. Virgos rarely experience major transformations dramatically. It's more subtle. A feeling that the ground beneath your feet is shifting very slowly in a way that none of your tools can accurately measure. A certainty that became less certain. A path that became less obvious. A version of yourself that you built with great care, with great intelligence, with great dedication, that suddenly began to seem a little too small for what you are feeling inside. That's not wrong. Small. It's as if you've grown beyond a version of yourself that you didn't even know was temporary. And here's what nobody tells you about that moment. This feeling is not a sign that something went wrong. It's not unresolved anxiety. It's not a crisis. It's not a planning failure. It's the call. And the call of Virgo, specifically the call of Virgo, always comes through a crack in what seemed most solid, into what you invested the most, into what you most believed was the right place. Do you know what a crack means for Virgo? It's not a catastrophe. It's something much more troublesome than that. It's the moment when analysis reaches its limit, when you've applied everything you had, intelligence, discernment, care, and still the answer hasn't come. The pattern you were looking for simply wasn't there. And Virgo stands still. For the first time in a long time, what would you feel? Not what you would think, what you would feel. Because that answer, the one that comes before thought, before analysis, before any structure you have built, is exactly what we are about to explore together. It was while searching for answers to this that I found this digital book, The Divine Path, that guides your zodiac sign to a life of purpose. The title might seem too broad until you realize it was written for the exact point you're at right now. That moment when analysis has reached its limit and something bigger has begun to move underneath. It's not an instruction manual. It's not a list of ready-made answers. It's the kind of tool Virgo rarely finds, something that doesn't require more analysis, but offers a clarity that analysis alone never achieves. The kind of clarity that only exists when you stop trying to understand the crack and start seeing what it reveals about who you are becoming. You're watching this video right now because something in this narration resonated with you in a way you didn't expect. This recognition isn't a coincidence. It's the most reliable sign there is for Virgo, more reliable than any calculation. And recognition has a window of opportunity. Acting while it's still active within you is different from acting afterward, when the rhythm of the day overshadows that feeling with other urgent matters. The link is in the first pinned comment, but be aware, this content may be taken down. Click now and download your copy. And in the comments, tell me, have you ever felt like you were following a perfectly constructed path, everything working exactly as it should? But even so, inside, there was a feeling that it wasn't yours anymore. Write it below. The word Virgo uses when describing this moment is usually insecurity, but that's not it. Insecurity is when you don't know if you're capable. What Virgo feels at this point is completely different. It's the feeling of being completely capable, and yet realizing that ability here isn't enough, that the destiny being prepared doesn't demand your skills. It doesn't demand the version of you that knows what you're doing. He asks for something that Virgo rarely offers freely, the willingness not to know, and that this specific provision is exactly what the higher power is waiting for. Not because Virgo doesn't deserve to get where it is, not because what you've built has no value, but because there's a version of you that doesn't fit into the structure you've created. A bigger, more vibrant, more whole version that can't emerge while you're still trying to protect it within the system that has sheltered it for so long. Think about it this way. You've spent years developing an extraordinary sensitivity to detect patterns, to perceive when something is out of place, to sense before anyone else when a change is coming. But now that same sensitivity is detecting a change that has no recognizable pattern. It doesn't fit into any category of changes you've processed before. It has no precedent in Virgo's internal archive, and the lab doesn't know what to do with unprecedented data. It keeps processing. It keeps searching for patterns. It keeps trying to find the logic that will organize what's happening. Running analysis after analysis, each result pointing in the same direction, insufficient data. But it doesn't find it, and in the silence of that inability to find it, a greater force begins to work. There is a very specific mechanism by which God operates in the life of a Virgo, and it has a characteristic that is simultaneously frightening and profoundly just. He enters through the points of greatest solidity, not because of your greatest weaknesses, as Virgo might expect, not because of the places where you already recognize you need help, because of your greatest strengths, because of the places where you are most convinced, most prepared, most certain of the path. That's where the crack begins. And Virgo's first reaction is not to let things crack. It never is. It's to analyze. It's a variable. It's to find the point of failure and fix it before the structure compromises the rest. But this specific crack, the one that originates at the most solid points, doesn't have a single point of failure. It cracks because the structure has fulfilled its function, because what grows inside has become larger than the space that was available. It's not a mistake. It's a time for expansion. The problem is that Virgo, at that moment, is still looking at the crack and seeing a flaw. It's still searching for the miscalculation. It's still looking for a way to return to its original state of solidity without realizing that this state can no longer exist because you are no longer the same size. Why? Because these structures, emotional, mental, identity-related, were not built to last forever. They were built to last long enough for Virgo to grow within them to the point where they needed something that the structures could no longer provide. Like a cocoon, not a prison, a protection, necessary, real, intelligent. For a long time, the only way for Virgo to grow without losing itself. But the cocoon opened. And here's the question that lingers when you accept this. Why does that different place never arrive when you're ready for it? This question is not rhetorical. It touches on something Virgo has carried for a long time. That feeling of having done everything right, of having arrived prepared, and yet destiny always seems slightly out of reach. As if there were a step between preparation and arrival that no planning can cover. It is precisely in this space, between what you have built and what has been promised, that the book, The Divine Path, that guides your zodiac sign towards a life of purpose, becomes a tool unlike anything you have sought before. Not because it provides ready-made answers, but because it maps this territory with a precision that Virgo immediately recognizes. The precision of someone who understands that true discernment is not the absence of doubt. It is clarity about where doubt points. The link is in the first pinned comment. The last copies are running out. Click now and begin your journey toward the clarity and genius you deserve. Virgo's resistance to this process has a quality that is almost admirable. It's not resistance born of stubbornness. It's not resistance born of simple fear, the kind you can name and overcome with willpower. It's a sophisticated resistance. It's Virgo applying all its intelligence, all the analytical capacity that makes this sign extraordinary, to finding reasons why change isn't necessary, so that the original path still makes sense, so that the crack is, in some way, still repairable. Flawless arguments, irrefutable logic, an internal presentation that any outsider would find convincing. After all, Virgo's arguments are almost always convincing. The problem is that the higher power isn't listening to the arguments. And here is the most disturbing paradox of Virgo's nature. The same intelligence that makes Virgo extraordinarily capable is the instrument Virgo uses against its own transformation. You use your best self against yourself, not for lack of courage, for an excess of intelligence applied in the wrong place. In the first moments after the cocoon opens, the butterfly doesn't yet know it can fly. It has completely new wings. It has a completely different structure from when it entered. But its muscle memory still feels the ground. It still remembers what it was like to be a caterpillar, and there exists within it, biologically, truly, an impulse to return. The cocoon was familiar. It was safe. It was the only environment she knew. But the cocoon has already served its purpose. It has already opened, there's no going back, and that's exactly what's happening with the Virgo version that's being called now. The structures you built were your cocoon. They weren't prisons, they were protection, they were necessary, but the version of Virgo that will fly, that will inhabit the different place that was promised, no longer fits within them. No matter how much muscle memory wants to return, no matter how much intelligence finds arguments to make the cocoon still make sense, you've already left. And the resistance you're feeling, all this sophisticated and intelligent resistance, is not weakness. It's the final gesture of a version of you that is saying goodbye. This moment of farewell, this space between who Virgo was and who they are becoming, is where many Virgos get stuck longer than they need to. Not because they don't want to move on, because this transitional territory rarely has a language, it rarely has a map. And Virgo, who has spent their life building maps, feels the absence of one with an intensity that few other signs understand. The book, The divine path that guides your zodiac sign to a life of purpose was built for this specific space, for the moment when you are no longer who you were, but you don't yet recognize who has arrived. It doesn't accelerate the process, it makes it habitable. It offers the clarity that Virgo's self-criticism could never provide because it is, for the first time, on the outside of resistance. The link is in the first pinned comment. The last copies are running out. Click now and begin your journey toward the clarity and genius you deserve. And then the moment arrives, not with fanfare, not with immediate certainty, not with the clarity Virgo expected. Because Virgo always imagines that when the right answer arrives, it will be immediately recognizable. It will make sense upon analysis. You will fit in a way that your inner laboratory will confirm without hesitation. But that's not how it works. The unfamiliar place feels like a strangeness, like looking in the mirror and recognizing the face, but not fully recognizing the person behind it. Like waking up on a seemingly ordinary day and realizing that something has changed so fundamentally that you can't even name what it was before. And the first sensation is not one of arrival, it's one of disorientation. This virgin who spent so much time building certainties and structures and maps, arrives at a different place, and the first thing she realizes is, I don't know where I am. And here something happens that Virgo rarely manages to predict because none of its tools are prepared for it. This disorientation is not a sign that something has gone wrong. That's a sign that it worked. Because a different place, by definition, cannot be familiar. It cannot be recognizable before you inhabit it. It cannot fit into previous maps, because if you knew, it wouldn't be different. It would only be an extension of what you already knew. And what was promised is more than an extension. Different is different. And for Virgo, who has organized their entire existence around familiarity, recognition, and patterns that can be learned, arriving in an unprecedented place is simultaneously the most disappointing and the most liberating experience imaginable. Think of a scientist, not just any scientist, one of those who dedicated years, perhaps decades, searching for a specific formula, who built hypotheses, conducted experiments, accumulated data, refined the methodology, who was so committed to the original question that each unexpected result was processed as a deviation, something that needed to be corrected so that the search could continue. And then, in an experiment that was about something else entirely, something completely different from the formula he was looking for, the data appears. Not the answer he was looking for, but the answer to a question he didn't even know he had asked. And he stops and looks at the data and realizes he's spent years searching for the right formula with the wrong question. This is how Virgo arrives in a different place. Not by the path you planned, not through the door you identified as the right one, but through the opening that appeared exactly where the structure cracked, and which led not to where you calculated, but to where you were promised. And the most disturbing part of all, when you look back at every crack, every recalculation of course, every moment of resistance, every instant of disorientation, you will recognize that there was coherence in it all. A coherence that wasn't yours, an intelligence that operated far beyond what your inner laboratory could have produced. And part of you will realize that you always knew you'd get here. This version of Virgo, the one that arrives on the other side without a map, but with something far more valuable than any map, needs a different kind of anchor. Not an anchor to hold her in place, but one that helps her navigate the new territory with the clarity that is, after all, Virgo's deepest gift. This is what the divine path that guides your zodiac sign towards a life of purpose offers for this moment. Not a return to old structures, but a new language to inhabit what has arrived, so that the extraordinary intelligence of Virgo, which never stops, which never ceases, may now work in favor of the version that has emerged. Not to protect what has been left behind, but to build, with all the discernment that has always been its gift, what comes next. The link is in the first pinned comment. The last copies are running out. Click now and begin your journey toward the clarity and genius you deserve. What happens to Virgo after that? It's not what you imagine. It's not that everything is simple. It's not that the internal laboratory stops. It's not that the analysis disappears, because it doesn't disappear. It's a fundamental part of who Virgo is, and it would be a huge loss if it did. What changes is what Virgo analyzes. Previously, Virgo's intelligence was turned inward, trying to protect, trying to predict, trying to secure. Building sophisticated walls that looked like foundations, but were in fact ways of not having to trust what lay beyond the walls. Ways of not depending on what could not be calculated. Then on the other side of the different place, that same intelligence turns outward, toward what can be perceived, toward what can be created, toward what can be built, with the clarity that only exists when you are no longer building to protect yourself, but to express yourself. It's like an artisan who worked for years in a small studio with limited light, with the tools that fit in the space he had, creating beautiful things, truly beautiful, because Virgo always creates beautiful things, even in the most limited conditions, but creating within a scale that was defined by space, not by vision. And then the studio changes. Not because the craftsman asked for it, not because he planned it, but because something, a force he couldn't control, opened a wall. And on the other side was a space he hadn't imagined existed there. And he looks at the new space with the eyes of someone who doesn't yet know what he's going to create in it. But you know, with a certainty far deeper than any analysis could produce, that what you're going to create there will be the most important thing you've ever done. This is a different place. For Virgo, it doesn't have the appearance you expected. It doesn't have the feeling of a triumphant arrival. It has the feeling of space, of possibility, of a strange and profound familiarity with something you've never experienced, as if your most essential being already knew this place, and the entire experience up to this point had been, in some way, preparation for inhabiting it. Not the preparation you consciously undertook, the preparation that was done within you, through every crack, every resistance, every recalculation of course that seemed at the time like a loss. But it wasn't. Each one was a piece of a map that you couldn't have drawn, not because you aren't capable, but because that map was drawn by an intelligence greater than any analysis you could have produced. And you, Virgo, with all your extraordinary ability to recognize patterns, you will look at this map one day and see the coherence that was there from the beginning. You will recognize the precision of each step, the intention behind each crack. And she will finally understand that she was never taken by accident. He was carried out intentionally to a different place. The place is, in a way that no plan could have achieved, exactly yours.